How's it going, folks? Sometimes, especially nowadays, it feels like we're living through major historical events every other day. However, to be fair, we always have been, even if those major historical events aren't happening in places we know or care about. Amidst 2025's already chaotic news cycle, the plight of one group of people has gone unheard: the restaurateurs of Togo. Indeed, in the West African nation of Togo, sandwiched betwixt Ghana, Benin, and Burkina Faso, for the past 65 years, the hardworking Togolese men and women of the nation's hospitality and food service industries have had their voices suppressed. For you see, there is a dark truth that lies behind the proud veneer of the Togolese nation. For most of Togolese history, formal sit down restaurants have been explicitly banned upon penalty of years in prison, or worse, culinary school. The only way to enjoy a meal prepared by someone outside your home in Togo is to pay for it and take it to go. The government of Togo has defended these draconian practices by claiming that allowing the existence of dine-in restaurants would irreparably damage the Togolese national identity as well as cause untold moral harm to the nation's youth. Aside from a brief period in which restaurants were permitted to have people eat inside during the French colonial era, which lasted from 1916 to 1960, this practice of only taking food to go has deep roots within Togolese society. In fact, it was said that long ago, Togolese travelers spread as far as China, where legends say they created Chinese takeout. Likewise, in the ancient chronicles of pre-Roman Germany, there exist mentions of Togolese emissaries instructing the ancient German tribes as well as the ancient kebab salesmen how to package kebabs so that they could walk and eat at the same time instead of having to sit down. However, today we ask the question, what if Togo allowed sit-down restaurants? To answer this question, we must go back to the beginning of modern Togo, right around when it became independent from France in 1960. Our story begins with Sylvanus Olympio, a Togolese revolutionary and politician who was the leader of the movement for independence from France. Olympio, whose anti-French views had been shaped by his experience with fascist colonial authorities during World War II, took up the cause of national sovereignty in the 1950s and was heavily persecuted by the French authorities as a result. However, cognizant that the tides of the world had shifted firmly against colonialism, France had no choice but to let Togo go. In 1958, the political persecution of Olympio would end, and he would become the leader of Togo. In 1960, under Olympio's rule, French rule would end and Togo would gain full independence. Olympio would be elected to a full term as the nation's president in 1961 after running unopposed. Perhaps the most influential portion of his political ideology was his fascinating mix of anti-French sentiment and pro-British and pro-American sentiment. Olympio would firmly move his nation out of France's sphere of influence, hoping to forge strong ties with the United States, United Kingdom, and West Germany. However, at the same time, Olympio had a very hostile relationship, not just with the French, but also with Togo's neighbor to the west, Ghana. Olympio and Ghanaian President Kwame Nkrumah initially hoped to work together, but a land dispute involving the land of the indigenous Ewe people, which was split between Ghana and Togo, would result in the two men having a falling out. Nkrumah thought that Togo should join Ghana, while Olympio thought Ghana should give their portion of the Ewe land to Togo. Colonialism, still causing problems even after it ends. Internally, stability was also a major concern in the young nation. President Olympio worked to limit government spending as well as the military-industrial complex, opting instead to develop a national economy centered around the principle of self-reliance. However, while Togo initially had no military, the Togolese government opted to create one following increasingly aggressive rhetoric from Kwame Nkrumah's government in Ghana. The push for militarization exposed a divide within the government. Olympio sought to keep the military small and restrained, while the burgeoning military leadership implored the president to expand the armed forces by incorporating Togolese veterans of the Algerian War into the Togolese army. Following an attempt on his life over the matter, President Olympio forbade any further military expansion, banned all opposition, and assumed near total control of the nation. However, Olympio failed to squash the rising resentment against him that grew in his own military, with many soldiers sympathetic to the plight of the unemployed veterans. Olympio's government would come crashing down on January 13, 1963, when a group of Togolese veterans seized control of all governmental buildings, arrested Olympio's cabinet, and executed Olympio, leaving his remains in front of the American embassy. There remains great suspicion regarding the role of Ghana in the coup, but this issue was never settled conclusively. The 1963 Togolese coup, which would forever scar the nation, was the first coup in sub-Saharan Africa. With Olympio dead and his government destroyed, the coup was a resounding success. Shortly thereafter, the military seized control of the nation and began to grow exponentially. The military would install Olympio's brother in law as the next president. They obviously were not close, considering he took the job. But his tenure would end in another coup, this time in 1967. Following the 1967 coup, Togo would be ruled by Etienne Nasingbe, a Togolese general who would rule the nation as a military dictator for decades until he died in 2005, whereupon he was replaced by his son. Nasingbe would reign as the supreme leader, which included his own bizarre cult of personality. The Nasingbe family remains in control of Togo today, and the country remains impoverished, undemocratic, and deeply corrupt. But most importantly, they still do not have restaurants.
Are you recording a Togo video?
No.
How many times do I have to tell you? They have restaurants in Togo. Like, it literally has nothing to do with the term to go. The term Togo comes from the Ewe language, meaning behind or on the other side of the river. Jeez, how long is this? Okay. Oh boy, that's a lot. I guess you've put too much work in to delete this, so let's try to salvage this ending.
Leave it to you to stifle my creativity.
How's it going, folks? Welcome back to another alternate history scenario. The focus of this video today is the nation of Togo. Without further ado, let's get into it. So, the point of divergence for this what if takes place in the run-up to the 1963 coup d'etat. Let's say Olympio is a little more suspicious of the military and places spies within the leadership structure. Let's say one of these spies alerts him of the impending coup, along with concrete proof that the Ghanaians are involved. I can imagine President Olympio reaching out to the US for assistance, probably using Liberian President William Tubman as an intermediary. Taking into account President Nkrumah's then recent trip to the USSR and the People's Republic of China, I can imagine the Kennedy administration deploying a discreet force of military personnel to support Olympio's government in exchange for a US military base in Togo. Accordingly, thanks to the increased security, the coup attempt is foiled and the plotters are executed. In the aftermath of the coup, I can see Olympio relax a little now that he has firm American support. I can definitely imagine him signing a mutual defense treaty of some kind. In 1966, Olympio is re-elected in an election that is unable to be certified as wholly free or fair, but it is clear that there is a sizable amount of support for the president in Togo. By 1971, I can see Olympio choosing to retire from the cutthroat life of politics that had shaped his life over the past 10 years. Even if his one-party rule doesn't leave a legacy of democracy, it does leave a legacy of stability. And in my experience, even if you don't have democracy, stability is still a great place to start from to begin democratization. Following the end of the Olympio era, Olympio would probably retire to the countryside before dying sometime in the 1980s or 1990s, remembered as Togo's founding father and after a couple of decades, as a national hero. Inheriting Olympio's stability, the future presidents of Togo, regardless of their moral character, would be shaped and restrained by the norms and standards that Olympio had established during his first term in office. I can easily envision this resulting in a robust democracy being developed in Togo by the early 1990s. For the sake of specificity, let's say that Togo holds its first free election around 1992 or 1993. Now, would they be super rich today? Probably not. But with democracy and careful guidance, this alternate Togo would be much more stable and would not have the unenviable claim to being the site of the first sub-Saharan African coup. And yes, they would also have dine-in restaurants. You know, just like they do in our timeline.